And here we are, we're live. So hi everyone. Welcome to today's the 25th episode of the Curious Leaders Path. And today we're going to talk about something juicy. We're going to talk about doing the difficult stuff. And and it's uncomfortable and it's weird and strange, but we're going to do it. So I'm here as always with my good friends Katerina and Joanne. And maybe the best way to start us off is to just jump right in and say, well, what do we mean when we talk about the difficult stuff? What is that?
The doing. Like doing sometimes is the difficult stuff.
That is true.
That's interesting for me. Like I think we were talking just before. Of course, we always love to talk beforehand to get it going, ramping it up. And it's interesting to see that I think we all have kind of like difficult things and difficult stuff that we may be challenged to do, and there's reasons why and everything like that. And I make up when we were talking about this earlier that I think a lot of leaders are leaders because they've learned how to do the difficult stuff, right? And we could certainly talk about, difficult conversations or, toxic teams, and we can talk about those things like that. And I guess for me, like this is very, very recent. The difficult stuff for me is facing that inner critic, like a deep-seated inner critic that has basically been there for a while for me, and that just revealing of that has really, it's been really great. But just to face it was very challenging for me because of it's something I wanted to avoid. Like when you're not feeling so great, when things don't go well, I mean, there's a majority of people are out there that would rather watch TV, eat chocolate, right? Drink, right? Do something.
What's wrong with any of those things?
Yeah, I know, really. Right? Come on. But when you start to use them to run away from dealing with what's going on, that's bad, right? And also, like I know certain different situations where I can hear that inner critic, and it came out really, really loud when I was doing something that I've never done before, right? So like for me, difficulty is more in the case of facing my own inner critics, because like give me a challenge. Like I mean, I love big, complex, challenging, difficult situations. I don't shy away from that. But the ones which are really personal are the most difficult. Yeah.
I'm going to take a slightly different approach than what we were talking about before. So in Dave Snowden's Cynefin framework, it goes from simple to complicated to complex to chaotic. And my argument, and I actually don't know if he agrees with this, I assume he probably would. My sense of how the Cynefin framework works is that things that used to be chaotic became complex for us. So they kind of became easier as we understood things more. The complex things became complicated, and the complicated things became simple. Because a lot of things that we consider to be simple, if we would show them to people 100 years ago, even very educated, intelligent people, they would find it very complicated, if not complex, or possibly even chaotic, right? So to me, the definition of what's a difficult situation is really what have we not figured out yet? And that could be in work settings. It could be on how do we manage ourselves, so the gremlins that we face that you're referring to, Joanne. And it's really a matter of learning new skill sets. And to me, that's really what separates the things that might be difficult to do, but we can manage, versus the things that are truly difficult in terms of stopping us from acting or stopping us from doing anything effective. And as we get into this increasingly complicated, increasingly volatile, unpredictable, uncertain world, we're going to be facing a lot more things that are truly difficult in a way of kind of getting us to freeze up. So, I think we shortchanged ourselves in the past. by not embracing difficult things and shutting them down for a lot of reasons, just for expediency, you know, to make money, to move forward, to be efficient, whatever. But we shortchanged ourselves a lot on a personal level as well as a business level and other ways as well. And now we don't have a choice anymore. Now we have to start dealing with these difficult things, which means we have to develop new skills.
That's really interesting because new to us is what pops into my head. Like it's, you know, we need to, it's almost like we need to rediscover old skills.
In new ways too, right? I mean, yes, we need to reclaim some old thing. Like there's a lot of things that we can reclaim from, let's say 100 years ago. It's just an arbitrary number, right? But there's also some things that we have to reclaim and update.
Reclaim and update. Okay. So wow. Because what's well, it's this is so interesting because you know, I really resonate, Joanne, with the, you know, sort of the inner critic and the inner gremlins, and you know, I've got my fair share of demons, and I think I've spoken about some of them on the Curious Leaders Path a few times. So, you know, maybe I know you both are quite familiar with them, and maybe the people listening to you are too.
And we've all got them. I mean, you're not the only one. It's just you're open about speaking the ones that you've got. Some of them.
Well,
tell us all your deep dark secrets.
Some of them. They're not so deep and dark anymore. Which actually was one of the things that I had to overcome. But I guess what's really interesting to me within this context is as things become more chaotic. And I like that distinction, by the way. Like chaos, complexity, complicated, and simple, right?
Yeah, and it technically goes around in a
circle.
It's a box, yeah.
Oh, okay, I like that.
Yeah, it's well worth looking up because it's a really interesting model.
Yeah, I'm gonna because you've mentioned it a couple times, and that sounds so. You know, I'll.
And I'm gonna put in the comments. Can I use? I can't use the comments.
Yeah, let's do that afterwards. Yeah. And then you can.
Bruno has a comment, which I actually I actually wanted to if anyone else is here, what is the difficult things that you have for anyone else that's listening? Because I just love it when people kind of say, oh, but this is what I'm facing, and oh my gosh, this is me, Bruno, to a T, to a T. Like it's a simple thing. It's not complex. It's a simple thing.
Yep.
But the thing that makes it difficult is, and Bruno, since I know you, I think I can say this, but you seem to choose relatively healthy things. Like, you know, I don't think he's eating pints of ice cream on a regular basis. But the things that make it difficult is we're always trying to change the behaviors. We're looking at the superficial things. And this is sort of going to your comment as well, Joanne, about leaders comfortable with dealing with difficult things, but they're doing it in a recipe format. They're doing it in a scripted way. And they're not getting to the real root issues. They're getting to the root issues they're comfortable with, but not the real root issues. And when we're trying to eat healthier, and God knows I'm in that camp too, you know, trying to eat healthier, exercise in the way that I've committed to myself to exercise, et cetera, you know, whatever other lifestyle things. Sometimes I'm just tired. Sometimes things get in the way. But most of the time when I don't live up to the things that I've committed to do, it's because there's something that's blocking me. There's some sort of mindset or something like that that's getting in my way. There's an unmet need that I'm not addressing. And if I were to address those unmet needs in better ways, I probably wouldn't want that pint of ice cream. And that's not my, you know, chocolate is my vice. But
chocolate ice cream?
Can't eat chocolate. I do not discriminate. Yeah, so and that's where the problem is that we're uncomfortable getting to those real root issues. And we're often not even capable of identifying what the real root issues are. We keep looking for scripts to tell us, you know, just tell me the answer, what the root issue is. Don't make me think, because I have no idea how to think. Yeah.
Yeah, recipes keep coming up for me. Well, and it's interesting. Some of you, I think you both know, I spent a little bit of time in pastry school, and one of the reasons that I wanted to go to pastry school was so that I could fool around with recipes. And it was really all about understanding them so that I could, fiddle with things, fiddle with flavors, change bits and pieces, do different things. And what I'm getting here is, it's not about knowing the recipe. It's about knowing how the parts fit together. It's about knowing, like you can't learn how to surf by reading a book about surfing.
Yeah.
You can't learn how to surf by reading 20 books about surfing.
Yeah.
You have to actually go and feel it.
Yeah.
And there's an element to that you got to feel it.
Yeah. My mom used to make bread that now people pay ridiculous amounts of money for. But as a little kid in the Wonder Bread era, we went to school with this really healthy, seedy, expensive bread now. I wanted square Wonder Bread and square cheese on it. And, I didn't want this gourmet cheese and blah, blah, blah. And when the neighbors would ask my mom for recipes, she would say, oh, just a bit of this, a dash of that, a pinch of this. And they'd go nuts because they're just like, well, we don't know how to do that. And she's like, well, when you knead the bread, when the gluten forms and when you get the right feeling for it. And they're just like, we don't know what you're talking about, because they just wanted to be told these ingredients specifically, right? But the thing is, when I moved from my hometown, which is a desert town, down to Vancouver, which was a humid seaside town, you had to change the recipes because of humidity. And when I moved to Tokyo and I made the same recipe, I couldn't because the wheat flour was actually a different protein content. And you had to learn how to adapt. And one of the best descriptions of this idea of first principles is actually somebody describing Julia Childs. So if you Google first principles, Farnham Street, the guy that's up in Ottawa, great blog for anybody who reads it. There is one of the best descriptions of first principles that I've ever read. And he actually uses Julia Child cooking to explain what first principles really are and really getting down to that, understanding why butter behaves a certain way in certain conditions, et cetera, right? So,
it's what's really interesting to me here, and this conversation has kind of gone in a direction that I got to admit I wasn't expecting it to.
Of course.
It's just because it's we're not really talking about what is the difficult stuff. We're talking about what we do and within the context of difficult stuff. And I guess what's really interesting to me, or what's coming up, is that there's an element of knowing so that you don't have to know. And I wonder.
Say that in a different way. Sorry to do that.
No, I love that. That's a great question because
there's a certainty aspect to it.
Well, so what did I say? I said, knowing so I don't have to know, but also so in a different way. It's like knowing. It's like feeling so I don't have to know. It's like knowing.
Intuition.
Yeah, like there's an element that this isn't about. Like this isn't about what I know abstractly. This is about what I know because it's part of me. Like there's a trust.
There's
I'm trying to figure out how this links to the bread and everything else that's going on.
Well, and I'm not sure that it does.
Well, it does.
Okay.
So intuition is always based on almost always. 5 out of the 6 academic definitions of intuition that I found all have expertise and knowledge as a root. And then there's the skill of actually, so let's do it with bread. The expertise is knowing, what flours do you use? How much flour do you use? What's the order that you combine things in? What are the things that you need to think about, that the temperature is right for the yeast and blah, blah, blah. That's all sort of knowledge. And the skill is when you've done it a few times and it starts becoming familiar. And then we get to a mastery level, which is where we intuitively start knowing. And intuition and mastery are quite closely connected. They're not exactly the same thing. But your intuition starts coming when you can start recognizing, there's a bit too much water in the mix because the gluten is behaving not quite the way I need it to for this recipe. Yeah. So when we talk about the technical expertise, which is what most people have who graduate school, textbook knowledge, that's called explicit knowledge. But the stuff that takes us to the skill and to the mastery level and then to intuition and true wisdom, that is implicit. And we don't, or tacit. So it's kind of the same word, same meaning. We just use it differently in slightly different contexts. But that we don't talk about in school. And it's very hard to codify that, to explain how do we get from the textbook knowledge to this mastery? Because many people will take different routes, and there's predictable routes. It's not like everybody's got a different way, but based on what our skill sets are, we're going to get there in a different way. So in terms of the bread making, the way that my mom used to make bread is, she just kind of knew that the air was humid today, and the flour she was using was a little bit old, so it behaved a bit differently as well. And then this time she wanted to throw in a bunch of dried fruit, but that brings in other humidity and sugars. Therefore, the yeast is going to behave a bit differently, blah, blah, blah. So she had the technical knowledge, but it was kind of like she didn't have to think about it anymore because it was just intuitive. But intuition can be wrong as well. We have to keep checking back to make sure that we're still relying on the same expertise. Yeah.
And what I really want to bring in, and not just because he says he agrees with me 100%, but what I really want to bring in is what Bruno just said in the chat. And it's the piece about action.
And learning.
Right? And I think that combination is really because as you were describing that, Kat, what was coming to me was muscle memory. And we like athletes do that all the time. You were talking before we started, you were talking about your experience on ski hills and being able to navigate just because what it is. And if you had to think about it first, your reaction
you'd hit the tree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that there's knowing and acting together in this space, and I wonder,
and learning. There has to be, and our magic little word, and I'm going to say it first, and I'm saying it.
Ding, 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 ding.
Ring the bell.
I love that we have a bell for that. I think that's fantastic.
I have a bowl. If we want to get the singing bowl out, I could do that too.
We can get in a few different sounds. We have to. So
now we all need bells. Go ahead.
Bruno, I agree with you 100%. It's action, but we have to talk more about the learning piece and the curiosity piece as well, because everybody kind of assumes that we're going to have learning and curiosity involved in action. But the reality is the way that people have been taught to play from childhood into adulthood, we've lost that curiosity. We've lost that sense of play. We've lost our ability to learn, because everything that we've been taught is to memorize, not to learn, not to ask questions, not to develop mastery, not to develop that real intuition. And we don't trust our intuition. And when we trust intuition, we trust it blindly, which is also dumb. Yeah. Anyways, my rant.
So what that comes up for me though, guys, is this the era that we're in, which is also around instant gratification, right? And I have to somewhat think that this plays a role in a lot of what. So it's just like, I just did this and it came up and I was able to see that. So it's like there's this aspect of I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to master it. I don't have to do this thing because you know what? Google's going to tell me, AI is going to tell me, something else is going to tell me. So there's a lot of this instant gratification. Now, it takes, I think, purposely stepping into learning how to wanting to be able to do it. If we talk about learning bread, like the difficulty of learning bread, my daughter's doing that with rye bread, and this is on like her not sourdough bread. I mean, she's now on her probably about the 9th or 10th week, and she's had to learn that the hard way. Now she's quite young, right? But she's very much persisting and what happened here, she's got, and so she keeps every week trying to figure out how to master it. But it takes you want to, like, it's for someone who's willing to kind of go through go through that journey to figure it out, even though it's not perfect at first, but it's that, what, like, to me, I'm always, well, what makes up a person who's willing to do this, and not for instant gratification, like instant thing. And this is, we were talking about happiness, right? In order to be happier, one of the components of being happier is satisfaction, right? And satisfaction isn't around instant satisfaction. It's around the satisfaction you get after, like, like you're talking earlier about some of the entrepreneurs, and it's like the ones that are really hardcore, they go through it, and they can actually continue to keep pushing through, because it's not for them. It's not about if it was just about every single thing that they got every day, that's one thing, but they're really there for the longer goal, right? And they're waiting until they kind of like get to that particular end to be able to achieve it. When they achieve it, it's exciting, it's great, you feel that deep satisfaction. Yes. Right, which is really important.
And then they want the next.
And then they want the next, right? And then that's where you get that the fallacy that you're going to be happy when you reach that destination, which isn't really good either. But there is an aspect of, I think, this whole thing that is floating in the air in terms of difficult situations, and like what you guys are saying, I think we're in a culture where this instant gratification goes against actually working through those specific challenges. Like, to lose weight, could we just take a pill? Could we take a pill? Like, can I just wake up tomorrow morning and be buff? Like, it's just like we want that instant gratification. Well, you know what? It's not there. It isn't there. Right. And so we actually have to go back to earlier. We really have to go back and slow it all down, really look at what we want, and we have to work on it. I'm sorry. You have to work on it. That's the only way you're going to get healthy. It's the only way you're going to lose the weight. It's just like, yes, I know. Exactly. And that's what it is, right? It's like, I can't do this like this. No, you can't. That's the fucking difficult thing of all this, right? Is that you have to take it step by step. And you have to, like, it's just like every day you look at, okay, great, what do I need to do tomorrow by action? There, it's just, it's hard, right? And guess what? We can do it.
It's fun. Like, that's the piece that we've talked about a few times before we get on to these conversations. But the analogy I gave was the tree skiing example, or skiing, off-piste, backcountry kind of stuff. And it's to ski in this unpredictable environment. I mean, we kind of knew generally what the conditions were. We generally knew what the snow conditions were going to be. It's not like it was completely unpredictable. It's not like we had monsters flying out of the middle of nowhere, but it was an unmanicured environment that we were skiing in. And every time we skied, even the same place, it would be a little bit different because somehow nature had changed. Right. But there was a real joy in that. Like, it was, skiing on the groomed runs would be fun for a while, but it was so predictable that it wasn't really that fun. And yes, we would push ourselves and push each other to see, can we go faster? Can we go harder? Can we go bigger? Whatever that would be. But I mean, that only goes so far. After a while, it was kind of like, well, what else can we do? What cliffs can we jump off? And we were stupid and young. But that was the joy. There was a real joy and an aliveness, and it was such a connection with nature that, if we hit a tree, you could die. Like, literally, you could die. If we jumped off a cliff and didn't make it, you could die. But it was such a respect for nature and trying to work with nature rather than trying to work against it, which is what manicured environments are. Yeah, these, with the corporate world, the false little tidy boxes of everything. That's working against nature. And when we learn to work with what to us is the unpredictability of nature, there's so much joy. And you use the word off camera, Todd, of mystery. And I would add awe, like, to really embrace learning how to navigate these difficult things. There's a joy because of that mystery, and because of the awesomeness of it, and because of the more that we understand things. It's just like, how can you not be amazed at how nature works in humans, in communities, in actual nature? Like, it's so amazing. And I think so many people are cheating themselves out of that. Sorry, I'm on total rants tonight. Sorry.
No, that's actually it's a really good rant. I like it because when I think of curiosity and doing the hard stuff, doing the difficult stuff, it's I like that approach. I like the approach of seeing mystery as something to learn from rather than something to figure out.
Yeah.
It's like, and I told you beforehand, I'm in the process of reading this book, which I didn't like at the beginning, but it really is stuck on me, called Radical Wholeness. And the theme today that kind of stuck me in the head and is really connected to what you're saying, Kat, is we see ourselves as a part from life rather than part of life, and it's at our folly because we really are connected to absolutely everything. And the way the author, and I wish I could remember the name of the author.
Shepherd?
Look it up. It's Shepherd. Thank you.
Yeah.
The way that it starts off is even the description of the way that we breathe, right? Like the things that we're breathing in are part of, this great eternal, nature that sustains us. And when we see ourselves as separate, that's when we kind of get into trouble.
Well, that's how we've created the crap that we're in now with the climate change and if you think about, Joanne, sorry, I keep talking. Let me just finish my thought very quickly if you want to jump in. If we look at this unbelievable high rate of suicide and anxiety and depression, Deloitte has research that shows that even some of the top CEOs are feeling lonely and depressed. This endemic we have of complete separation from everything. We're killing ourselves. We're killing ourselves in so many different ways. It's just everywhere we turn, we're killing ourselves. And that, I think, is because we try to oversimplify things. We try to take the mystery out of everything. We've tried to take the awe out of everything. We've tried to bloody well control everything when nature is in control.
And we try to do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
And some of
That's the
these
truth.
it's lonely to be a one-up, right? It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones that have to make all the decisions. They're, it's just like, Anyways, I think that when I was just looking at the time, and I know it's like 2 minutes left, and I was going through, how can we kind of get through some of these difficult things, right? Like to me, sometimes it's talking to another person. It really is, right? It's just like, I'm having a challenge getting through this. You got any tips? You got any tricks? You got any whatever? You call any of us.
And not looking for answers. I love the idea of looking for tips, tricks, perspectives, but not trying to find an answer. Trying to find better questions. Sorry to interrupt, Joanne.
Okay.
I agree. I think the difference for me, if I were to simplify this, the difference for me between a career that I found really, really, really hard and a career that I'm finding really, really satisfying is community. So I really, really echo what you're saying, Joanne, because it's not easy. Like the things that we're doing are not easy. The things that we're doing aren't like, there's no recipe for them. We're creating it as we go. And without community, it would be, I don't think it would be possible. Not for me anyway. And maybe for me, that's the key. That's the key of doing the difficult stuff, because the difficult stuff is a lot of fun and it's really, really rewarding. And I can't do it alone. I need help. It's one of the reasons why I love talking to you two. Anything else that we want to end on before we say goodnight?
I guess what I'm interested in Kat's question of asking better questions, like say just a few more sentences about that, because I think there's something really important that's there.
I'll answer it in a slightly different way, but I think it's answering the question is embrace the mystery, embrace curiosity. Don't try to understand everything. Just try to understand things better. And then ask more questions, like keep being curious, keep experimenting, keep learning, don't try to get anywhere specific in terms of, when I get here, I'm done. When I get here, everything will be perfect. It's like, no, we have to embrace this journey of learning and growth and curiosity and mystery and awe.
Yeah, I love that because it just gives me that feeling of every day can be slightly different, right? Like, all of a sudden I gained 5 more pounds from yesterday and I didn't change a single thing. What was that about? You never know, right? It happens, I just love this aspect of there's like this arrival fallacy, which is where people tend to go. And when I get there, I'm going to be really happy when I get there. But it is in the aspect of, what's underneath that's more important. So,
there is no destination. This life that we're living is the destination.
Yeah. And enjoy it.
And lean into the hard stuff because it's worth it. Thank you so much, both of you. This was a fun conversation, a little different than what we usually do, but this was a fun one. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone who tuned in, and thank you, Bruno, for your comments. And I guess we'll see you next time. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.